I was at Facebook for a number of years, and I had the good fortune of meeting my co-founders there. I worked with a lot of the people who were fortunate enough to join us here. So it's been an incredible journey. And Facebook was a story of crazy scale. Again, quick anecdote. This was around 2007 when I was trying to decide if I should join this small but growing company, and which was Facebook. And I remember looking at their site, and they had about 30 to 40 million users on the site. And back then I remember thinking, yeah, one of the biggest sites is Yahoo Messenger, and they have 50 or 60. So maybe the site can double, but I don't know. They seem to be bold. They're building interesting things. I love the product. I love their vision for infrastructure. So I joined, and boy, could I have been any more wrong. It went to 2 billion users over the next 6 years. So it was an incredible journey. And speaking of this, it spurred the whole journey here. So yeah.
It's incredible to think about just when you were joining the start. You were at the conception of startups. I know the .com era gets a lot of hype and all, but really around that time, post-recession is when all these companies really started to find and achieve value and really tackle what people were missing. And describe that whole process internally. Was there something different about how it was communicated that kind of molded and shaped how you uncover problems, whether it's from users or technology, or how one thing you did a talk years ago and I was reviewing it. And one thing you said that was so profound, it was like, we don't think about people wanting to contact people. We think about what people want to say to people. And I thought that was so important because that opens up the channels you can do it. So describe kind of mentality at that time.
Yeah, I think Facebook was a phenomenal place. It was move really fast, be very bold, try ideas, and it encouraged people to fail fast. And it's okay if you fail fast and learn a lesson. That's great. It's better than sitting on what could be success for a very long time. You better go for the real thing. So number of such principles, like for example, the first, we ended up building Apache Cassandra. Actually, it wasn't called that then. We had an internal code name, but we ended up building this because people on the site could message each other, but they couldn't search their messages, right? And when we wanted to build something to allow that indexing and searching of messages, we found that it'd get way too expensive if we did it with MySQL. And it's just not going to be operationally easy. So we said, you know what, this thing doesn't really, it has the scale characteristics and the availability characteristics, but yet has to be cheap. There's really nothing that can do what we want. Let's just build a database. And you don't do that lightly on the infrastructure side. But at Facebook, we had the ability to do that. And we ended up building and open sourcing this thing. Open sourcing was more the hiring and do good for the world, etc. And we literally didn't know open source databases would take off. In fact, I remember the 3-person team were working on it and we were asked to name it, and the others wouldn't be bothered with naming a database or naming the project. And so I was like, okay, we're dealing with eventual consistency, and any database has to be named after Oracle. So we ended up choosing the name Cassandra because that's the only other Oracle I knew other than Delphi, and Delphi, Oracle of Delphi, right? Delphi was fake and Delphix had it. So we said, fine, Cassandra it is. And who knew it would have become that popular, right? So anyways, forward to the next project we did, which was a database for messaging. And it was literally like, don't worry about how you reach a person, how they want to consume it. Oh, wait a minute, that's my uncle who really likes to get it in the form of an email. Oh, that's my younger cousin. They absolutely SMS. This third person will be a power user of Facebook. Let them choose their way. Make it simple for them. Similarly, Newsfeed was another way to quickly inform people of what is going on in a lightweight way. And so in a lot of these, you could get lost in the complexity of building. But if you're doing it the right way, you could unlock a lot of value, right? So it's been an incredible journey of really going down to the basics and questioning everything and figuring out, is there a more efficient way, a smarter way to satisfy the need?
And what other companies at the time, when you would look externally, were doing some of the things, which was building internally the tools that they needed to almost continue to, I don't want to say moat this ecosystem, but once you're in the ecosystem of Facebook, it's hard to leave. And you think about Marketplace now, you think about all these different things they've added in addition to it. What other companies did you see at the time that were building these external tools rather than relying on existing technology?
Yeah, I think there were a number of companies in the Facebook bucket itself. Obviously, Facebook became massively popular, but there was Twitter, naturally, they were doing good stuff then. There was MySpace, there was FriendFeed. There were a number of these type of social companies, so to speak, each with their own philosophy. Yeah. They had a slightly different twist on what it is that they would want to build underneath. But they were all fearless. They were all moving fast. They were all building their own things, and it was pretty good. I would put, to a large extent, even though they started much earlier, Google in the same bucket, because if you think about what Google search and maps have done to us, is you can't even imagine life without these things today, right? And yet in 2000, we didn't really have them. So around about that time, so that was pretty fundamental. I would say Apple had a renaissance around then because they really changed the way we operate, like with the smartphone and
Mhm.
BlackBerry, Apple, those class of companies. So I'd say there was a whole
Yeah.
set of companies that kind of took off around that time. Public clouds, I think all three of them, they started in give or take around that. They figured if we learned how to use our infrastructure, why can't we help others use that infrastructure to some good? So yeah, I think there's a lot of these type of companies that did bold things, building stuff, open sourcing it along the way if it wasn't directly their competitive secret sauce. Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I think it still is.
Nowadays, it's actually very challenging to see a lot of people stay at companies for so long. And a lot of that is not necessarily the reputation of the company. No longer really means as much as it did. But I think even back then, in the antithesis of a lot of these projects, what was it that was really keeping you around? Was it the newness of it? Was it the innovation? Was it the culture of it? What was working within those companies that you see even now other startups model themselves after?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually. And I think this is a very profound question. I think there's a few things. Firstly, my gauge, when I was going through this journey personally, I can talk to how I felt, right? I used to feel that the interviews had way harder questions than real life. So it gave me a
Okay.
feeling of, okay, if you just wanted me to do this, why'd you ask me all that? And don't get me wrong, I actually liked what they asked in the interview. It's just that you wouldn't find it afterwards. And so and that's because of I would say to some degree, a lack of boldness on the part of the company. They
Mm,
wanted to be a little safe, play it safe, right? And don't go disrupt and do crazy things. The second one is getting caught in the decision making loop, like as opposed to making the hard call, whatever it is, and sticking through it, right or wrong. Like, and that's a second piece. The third thing has to do with transparency and empowering, but yet accountable culture. Junior people, yeah, they need to earn their chops. Senior people, they probably. But Facebook was the first company I saw that broke all of these barriers. I remember in
yeah.
Facebook, their philosophy was simple. When I joined, they told me, this is how you check out code, this is how you do this, you do that, fine, basic orientation. Okay, I said, now what? I said, I don't know, you go figure it out. And because my manager was too busy to tell me what to do, he said, like, why don't you go figure it out and do something and tell me what you're doing? And oh, by the way, just send me a couple of lines about it every week because I got to send it a report. And yeah, I'm busy with my own stuff. So they never said what to do. And that was great because then people would find it's not one person thinking, it's 100 people, 200 people thinking about what to do. And that really empowered it. But yet they used to keep it accountable, right? You can't keep trying to do stuff and not do stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that yin and yang that you have to manage. And it was extremely transparent and open. Like you could come and ask Mark Zuckerberg, he would say, ask the harder questions inside because I'd rather hear it from you guys than from somebody else outside the company and during an interview. So just make sure to ask us all the hard questions, whatever you
Pretty
don't
good.
trust. Yeah, make it all clear right now. I'll at least practice with you guys before I go out, right? So yeah, I think it's that
Yeah.
culture of not being afraid and being bold and empowering people and keeping it transparent. And so that's what motivated me. Like, in fact, my reason to leave Facebook was not because I stopped learning or I didn't like Facebook. It was none of that stuff. It was because Facebook had grown so big and I had ambitions of eventually doing a startup, like starting a company of my own, that the problems I was
Mhm.
solving at Facebook, while technically and intellectually very challenging, were no longer the problems that the common company or the common person would face. Right.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just had to go look for other avenues to learn other things, but I still loved Facebook. I would have stayed there equally as
Yeah.
much as I believe. So
Yeah. It's so fascinating thinking about the amount of obviously responsibility you had joining, but also the amount of just freedom that in terms of pursuing the different projects and how valuable that is. But I feel like it's hard to have that level of trust with whoever you bring onto the team. And does that kind of now, has that impacted the way you evaluate talent? Seeing, I don't want to say younger versions of yourself, but almost similar personality types, whatever you want to describe it as, that lead to that level of ability to work autonomously, to innovate, to challenge, to have initiative. Has that experience impacted how you
100%.
assess talent
Yeah,
now?
100%. Yeah. In fact, that is actually one of the most critical things I tend to look for when hiring is the drive, the curiosity, the need to have impact, the hunger, right? And it's not, and I would say it's fair game or more than fair game to offset if the person doesn't specifically know a particular field, right? Like, for example, we may not end up hiring a person that knows everything about databases because that's okay. They can learn as long as they have the rest of the ingredients that would make them successful, right? And a large part of it is about both. It's you got to have the two sides in check and balance, right? You want to have that drive, hunger, and take on something big and change, but yet do it in a way where you're really accountable and responsible, and you can make that impact happen. It naturally forces you into talking to people, to seeking advice rather than just doing something on your own and putting it out. So it just changes the way you behave and your ability to create impact and your confidence in yourself. And the next project will get bigger and then bigger. And so it just gets a lot more satisfying from that point of view.